So my name is Farkhondeh Tajik, Farkhondeh Tajik in Farsi. I was born in Iran, in Bandar Abbas. According to my mom, my dad picked my name. And the meaning of it in Farsi means happiness. And also in Eid, they use my name, like Eid Farkhonde Bad. That's how much I know. What else? 31 years old. So to not make it too long, my parents got married, and then in Afghanistan, they moved to Iran. And then they had 4 children, 3 boys and a girl. The girl is myself. And so we were born in Iran. Actually, 3 of us were born in Iran, 2 of my brother and then myself. My dad was there before I was born for a long time, 35 years, something like that. I remember life was hard in Iran about job, like getting a job, working and supporting the family. As long as I remember when I was a child, my parents always tried us to go to school. It was their goal, main goal. And unfortunately, they always tried to pay money and change our school from one school to another school. So that time it was me and my older brother. He was in different school and I was in different school. It was all girl and all boy kind of thing. When I was in the first grade, we moved, but I wasn't sure why we keep moving and changing the school. And now when I look back and when I talk to my parents and when they say it, it was because of originality, because where we were from Afghanistan, and not having any kind of ID or something. I feel like it's hard to not be yourself. It's funny because I remember prayer times, we used to leave the class and then go for prayer in the hall. So being us Afghani people being Sunni, in Islam, Sunni and Shia, and Iran mostly was Shia. So during the prayers, I start praying my close hand while Shia people pray when their arms is down. So it's a little bit differences. And so they realized that and they called my parents to school. And so after that, when my parents changed my school, so I had to teach myself not to do that. And obviously you don't have a choice to not go to pray. You have to. It's not an option, right? So I had to make it fake and didn't really understand what is the reason behind it. But I just thought maybe going to school, in a school, that's how you do it. And at home, we just do it differently. But I don't think so I adjusted because I always had to rethink before I did an action. Not do it naturally, but think it first before I did something. So before we were going for praying, I had to think and remember what I'm supposed to do and what I'm not supposed to do. So I never adjusted. But as much as I know, as long after changing couple of schools for my brother and myself, my parents felt like the entire city knew that we are from Afghanistan, because every time they were going to school, they weren't saying we are from Afghanistan. They had to lie about it to be accepted to school. So after multiple times doing that, I think they got caught and they knew that none of the school will accept us, and they tried to pay money. People used to come to our house and teach us reading and writing, and it wasn't formal school, but someone just help us in the house. So they did that for a while for my brother and myself. And then obviously jobs became really hard. We used to always see our neighbors being robbed, and they were from Afghanistan as well. Our people were being killed and their money were stolen, and people weren't giving Afghani people jobs. So my dad lost job, and then they decided to move Iran, and that's when they went to Turkey. So Turkey was completely different story. I remember first when we got to Turkey, I believe about almost 3 years we were living illegally. First, at the beginning we weren't. So as a refugee, you have a case in UN, and then if you have they accept your case or they reject your case, and our case was rejected. So that means we had certain amount of time to go back to our country, and we didn't go back. So we stayed in Turkey. And about 3 years we lived illegally. And it's funny because I always think about that, and our house was next to the police station. And because we never bothered anyone, like nobody knew we were there, it was the police station was next to us and our neighbor. And so about the school, that 3 years, I never went to school. We couldn't even go to the hospital. So I remember even my mom gave a birth to my younger brother at the house because we were illegally and could not go to the hospital. It was a traumatic experience because I saw my mom, we believed that she was died and then came back. So after 3 years, one of my dad's friends at work, they reported us to the police. So the door knocked and I opened the door. My parents was behind the door with the police car, and so they were there to take us. All they said, you have 5 minutes to get whatever you need to get and get to the car. And so my dad ran one side, my mom ran to the other side, and I went to the living room. So I remember I believe it was my mom grabbed my younger brother. He was at that time only 1 year old, and he was sleeping. And then my dad grabbed a couple blankets. My mom also grabbed a couple cookies that she made a couple days before. And in that time, when they were rushing us, the police, that we need to get out of the house that time. And I don't know, I just found myself holding the sewing machine. And prior to coming to Turkey, in Iran, my parents did sewing and all that kind of stuff. So like male shirts and children's clothing. So my mom always loved sewing. And I just grabbed the sewing machine. I was like, maybe that's like valuable thing we had at that time. Maybe in that mindset, because we didn't have really anything expensive in the house. So we got to the car and my mom said we didn't grab the diapers for my younger brother. So the police, they were nice and stopped at the store. So we grabbed a couple diapers. And then we went to my brother's work and we picked him up. And at the same time, my dad saw one of his friends and he said, this is my key house and just take it. If we come back, we'll take the stuff. If not, then whatever you do, you just do it. And then we got to the car and they took us to the police station and we stayed down there for a couple hours. And then they took us to the border. And in the border, they combined us with all other single male that they were illegally from different countries. So they combined all of us together. And we were the only family. Everybody else was single. So we got everybody together. They put us in one car. And they took us to the border. And that border, I never forget, the police or the soldier, I should say, that was walking with us. And I knew the language, so he was talking to me and I was translating to my parents and to my family. He told me that, so we walked through this border for a couple minutes long. And while he was walking us, he looked at me, he said, just pay attention and just keep going straight. Don't turn right, don't go left, just keep going straight from now on. Because they got to the border of Iran. So they told us, the soldiers said that we cannot cross from here now on. Now from this point, you're on your own. But the sentence that he told me that I never forget, that he said, just keep going straight, don't go right and left. And all I was seeing, it was just a desert. There is now no sign or anything that, that could help me and guide me to where to turn. And the reason he said keep going straight, he said if you go right or left, there is like a mines and bombs from, who knows, from long time ago, and he said that they would explode. So we started walking from there, and then the soldiers left because that was the end of the Turkey and Iran's border. So we started walking to the Iran's border for hours, and it was dark. and of course with this giant group of other single men. So the two females, between probably we were 30, 40 people we were together all, and there was two female, me and my mom, and everybody else male. So we're walking, and I'm holding the the sewing machine, and my dad was holding my brother, and a couple of us holding the blankets and some food. And these young boys, they came to us, they said, do you need help? We can help you with all the stuff. So they got the food, the bags of the food that we had for my younger brother. And so they were carrying the food. Some of them helped us to carry the blanket and sewing machine and all that stuff. So they grabbed it from us. And obviously they were young and strong, and they were very helpful. So we started walking and walking, but of course completely dark. There is no vision. And like little bit small trees that you can see it. Not trees, but probably like a long grasses. So the long grasses we're walking through, and then from far distance we saw a car's light, like kind of like hitting at us. So in that moment, this young gentleman's couple of them start running away, and in between them, I guess there was one or two came through this road so many times, and then they were deported, they got caught and came back, so they knew the road very well. And then other people, like other single men, they knew this boy knows the road very well. And otherwise, like you literally closing your eyes and like blindly walking and you don't know where you're going. That's how we were walking. So when the one that he knew the road, he started running. When he started running, everybody else followed him. And of course, we had the small children. We couldn't run. So we just lay down on the grass. And of course, the food, all the drinks, everything we had, they took it with them. And they dropped the blankets and the sewing machine, all that, those heavy stuff. So we lost the food that day, that night. And then, of course, the car just turned around and didn't see anyone. The car left. And of course, everybody else was gone. It was just my family. And of course, I picked up the sewing machine again. I picked that up. And my dad and my mom got really angry. And they're like, no, throw that out. We don't need this. I said, Dad, I can carry it. Like, what else are we going to do? So my brother grabbed the blanket and my mom grabbed another one. And they grabbed my younger brother. So we walked. I believe I have like blurry vision kind of. I don't remember how many hours we walked, but we walked the next day, entire day. We didn't get caught, but we didn't know at that, like after that night passed, we did not know which side we came from, where we're going. We're just like walking. We're just walking in an empty desert and there is nothing you can see. So we started walking the entire day. It got night again. So at night, with that 2 blanket that we carried, we used it that night because we put it on the grass and we slept on it. And we woke up early morning, a little bit late, and we realized that we slept under a mountain, and on top of a mountain is soldiers from Iran. So if they caught us, they're gonna deport us to Afghanistan. So we were like, we need to get out of here as soon as possible. But the interesting thing was, when we woke up, the space that we were in, there was like a small piece of land, and around it was like a big hole. Dariche, like, I don't know what is called in English, like, but it's like a big holes on the sides. So, but we were stuck in that middle piece of land that it never made sense to me, that because that area we were walking all over the place that night and we never fell in the holes. And I don't know how we managed it. I just believe it was just something from God and that protect us that night, that we did not fall to this big holes. And so it was hard for us to get out of that. So we found our way to get out of that space and just like go far from this like soldiers area. So we walked another couple hours, and then there was a motorcyclist. A soldier on the motorcyclist caught us, and he was from Iran. So the soldiers caught us from Iran and they took us to the camp. We were there for a couple days, and it was horrible because they used to every day they used to take all the men from the camps that we were in. They would go in the hall to the yard, and they would make them do push-ups, do like sit down, and whoever got tired or if they didn't make it, they would beat them. And I remember they didn't do that to my dad because we were family, or I don't know what was the reason. It was very scary to wait that you would think like, oh my God, this is going to happen to your family now. But of course you feel horrible for other people because it's happening in front of your eyes. So this was like everyday thing. And then they deported us to Afghanistan. And that was the first time I saw my country. I was thinking that I'd probably go back a little bit. So while we were walking through this empty desert, going from Iran's, like walking Iran's border, it was definitely a couple days that I don't even remember. We were just walking. And of course, prior to that first night, our food and drinks all were taken away. And we were just walking without no food and no drink for days. And I remember like that time we never thought about the food. It's just like, I guess you're in a survival mode. And now thinking about it, I'm like, how did we survive and not even thought about the food until the Iran soldier caught us. And then when we were in the camp, I remember they were giving us a food, but it wasn't a food. It was a dry and really hard bread that it was like around the camp. They would leave breads and they would just, who knows, like they stay like months and months. Whoever comes through and goes through the camp and just like you have to eat that kind of stuff. And it was literally on the ground. It's not like in the dish or anything. So you get to the point that you feel like if you don't eat that, then what else? There is nothing else. So I remember we used to get those breads and eat them just to like keep us alive and eat something. And in Farsi we say kapak, like kapak mizane. It was even like that, like those little greens around like the cardboard bread that forms that kind of breads. But we used to eat them just to eat them because we didn't know how long we were gonna be there. We didn't have no food prior. For a few days we didn't have no food, nothing. And until they deported us to Afghanistan. And that was when the first time I saw my own country. I just remember it was very dusty. People were looking at us the way we were dressed and had like little shawls. We made the scarf for ourselves, and obviously you have to have a scarf like going outside in Middle East, in Afghanistan or even Iran. So I had like my shirt had a hole, that shirt that I had in the house for cleaning, and it was a short sleeve, so obviously that was not normal, somebody wearing outside. So people were looking at us, and we just like probably looked miserable. I don't know how we looked that time. We were tired and mentally, physically, and I just remember it was very dusty and we were in the cars. And
which part of Afghanistan?
Kabul. I feel like I was very scared, even though it was my country, it is my country, but I didn't feel belong. Never been there. I mean, of course, like we met Afghani people. We had the community in different countries, but being in Afghanistan was completely different. That time I didn't feel belong. I feel like wherever I went first, I didn't feel belong. Didn't matter where it was. And then in Afghanistan, about people, like obviously I don't remember if I saw a lot of women outside. So probably that's like males looking at the females in the different eyes. And so I just have that memory of being scared and like terrified and don't want to be outside and just want to be home. So I remember most of our time in that 3-4 months that we stayed was in the house. We barely went outside and did anything fun or something. And we realized that we couldn't even stay there. And my parents started to figure out how we can get out. And after 3, probably less than 4 months, we left and went back to Turkey.
You left because?
We didn't feel safe. We didn't see any future there. A lot of reason, especially for women. I mean, I do know there is women always go to school and they put their life in risk and they do anything to get an education. It's just a lot of risk. And my parents always fought for our education and go to school. And I feel like Afghanistan would be probably the worst place to stay, especially for us that we never been. People that born there, I feel like of course, I don't believe that you get used to war and this and that, like all that negative stuff. You still always have a fear. But going from outside there suddenly, I felt it was more terrifying. So at the first time we were there to the end, before we left, we were just trying to get out of there until we were 60s and we left. So second time going to Turkey. I feel like we were a little bit more educated now, like how to go, because I didn't say that the first time. First time when we left Iran to go to Turkey, we left in winter. So where we were in Iran, in the state of Bandar Abbas, we never seen snow. The snow was something like fairy tale type of thing. We always saw it on the TV and cartoons, so it was just magical thing. And because the state was very warm.
You never traveled inside of Iran. You just was in Bandar Abbas.
Yeah, we were mostly there. We went to some other like cities, but not to live. No, actually we did. We did go to Shiraz and yeah, I do remember. But mostly we were in Bandar Abbas. So when we went to Turkey, we didn't know that Turkey is gonna be winter and freezing mountains. So obviously when you go as a refugee, the people that they guide you and they don't care about your life, they all care about the money. When we got to the mountain, these people, when they took us, they were supposed to guide us to take us to Turkey from the border because we're traveling illegally, we're not flying or anything like that. So my parents rented 2 horses, I remember, and because it's just like miles and miles, days of days walking in the mountains in the snow. And of course we had summer clothes. We weren't prepared at all. I had summer shoes, I had summer clothes on me, and my parents, my brother, all of us the same thing. And in that time, we saw so many times when we were walking from mountain to mountain, we saw dead bodies on the road. There was a family with us, a pregnant woman, that they had a boy and the husband and the wife. And the mountains are really high. You just keep climbing and coming back through the mountain and then next one and after another. So this family, this husband, hold their son to go climb this mountain. And so we all walked together, but the wife couldn't walk anymore. She said that I'm gonna stay. So the husband went back up, and their plan was to go back and get his wife. And he couldn't go back anymore. And the wife couldn't come back to the mountain, couldn't continue anymore. And I remember a few days later, we got the news that she was died and just like froze on the snow. It's a horrible thing because everybody thinking about themselves. I mean, even if people want to help you, they can't help you because they can't even help themselves. So it's a road to you just want to get to the next step. So my point was, the first time we went very unprepared in the snow, in the cold, and I always thought that was mu'jiza.
Mu'jiza, miracle.
Miracle. It was a miracle that we survived, my entire family, because in every family that they were going, at least they lost a child or lost a wife or lost a husband. And we were the only family that we didn't lost any of us. But of course, we went to the deaths and all those roads. And one memory that I have from that mountain, so the roads are so narrow, very narrow. I'm picturing now on the left side, when we were walking on this road, like literally this wide road, that you can walk, but you can't even turn back and look because there is no space to turn back. And on the left side, it was the big mountains on the left side. And on the right side is just like chale, like down, like hole and down. Like if you fall, you just like roll through the mountains and die. So this road that we can't even go right or left, we just like keep going forward. It was my mom on the horse with my younger brother, and my another brother was on the horse, and my other brother and myself, like back and forth like that. And then my dad was the last person. And of course the guides, there was two guys that were guiding us. They were ahead of us. So my dad was the last person behind us. And of course, as I said, like we couldn't really move and look back to see if somebody's coming or not. So we were trying to communicate and talk, like, Dad, are you there? Mom, are you there? So I could see my mom and my brothers in front of me, but when my dad was in the back, so I couldn't look. So, and my mom had this blanket on herself to keep her warm with my younger brother, that he was 1 year old, on the horse. So she didn't have no vision, just under the blanket on the horse. And walking through this mountain for hours. And of course, I keep checking on my dad, see if he's there, just by talking. And then after a couple hours, I remember I called out on my dad if he was there, and he didn't respond. So I just stopped, and not to my right side, which was the whole side, through the mountain side. So I kind of slowly turned left and looked, and there was nobody behind me. So and my mom was way ahead of me because like we were having some space being between everybody. So I just screamed, and especially she had a blanket, she couldn't even hear, and frozen, nobody's talking. So I just screamed, I said, Mom. I said, Mom, I don't see Dad. And she said, just stop. So I stopped, and I told one of these guys that they were guiding us, and I said, I don't see my dad. He said, he will come, we have to just continue. And my mom said, don't, just stop. So I just stopped, and I said, nope, until my dad doesn't come, then we're not gonna move. So I was just like saying the same thing, and he realized that we're not moving. So one of them stayed with my mom and my brothers, and then the other one, I said, I'll go back and check on my dad to see where he is. So one of them went with me back. So we moved off the entire mountain. So we had to come back all the way. And these mountains are giant. It's not just like a regular mountain around here you see. And then, so my dad was sitting on the snow. So I talked to him, and he didn't respond. And then the guy told him to get up and let's moving. And I said the same thing. He did not respond. He was just like sitting on the snow, no movement, no talking, nothing. So, and this guy had, there is, what is it called in English? We call it shallock, that they use it for horses. They hit the horses to make the horses move, the animals to move. And he started beating my dad on his legs, on his back. And I started crying. I didn't know what was the reason that he was hitting my dad. But then obviously later, years later, I realized like why he was hitting my dad, because his body was completely frozen. He was trying to make his blood circulate again, and he can feel, and his body to get warm up. And then after he started hitting my dad really hard on his back, on his legs, and then my dad just suddenly stood up. So he started walking with us. So we went back up, and we met my mom and my brothers. And then after that, from that point on to beyond, I was the one always like stayed on the back to make sure that everybody's, especially my dad, like they are there. So I was going like back and forth, being unexperienced and being a little bit experienced on the second time. So we did not move. So when we deported to Afghanistan, so second time going to Turkey, we said definitely not in the winter, because in the winter we almost like died with the summer shoes, with all kind of stuff, and we walked, and most of the time in that first time when we were walking on the snow, I lost my shoes that I didn't even know. I did not have a shoes. I was just walking with the socks. And I never felt it because my legs were frozen. We were just walking, and the snow was over my knees. We had to take our feet out of the snow and put it back like that. So, and then slowly for hours and hours. The first time I believe we walked like about 17 to 18 hours in the snow, and I didn't have one shoes. And so the second time when my parents were leaving Afghanistan to go back to Turkey, they said definitely not in the winter. So they had they waited for like a nice weather, and of course we were more prepared with food and with clothing and everything. So the second time was easier to coming back to Turkey.